चंडीगढ़ प्रेस क्लब जो एक इंस्टीट्यूशन है रन बाय द जर्नलिस्ट फॉर द जर्नलिस्ट, तो उसके एग्जिस्टेंस के 45 साल 45 इयर्स हुए हैं और इसमें बहुत हमारे सीनियर जर्नलिस्ट का कंट्रीब्यूशन है, फाउंडर मेंबर्स का कंट्रीब्यूशन है और जो अलग अलग समय पे गवर्निंग काउंसिल रही उन लोगों का एक कंट्रीब्यूशन है। तो हमें पहले हमने एक लेक्चर सीरीज स्टार्ट किया था, तो उसका ही एड ऑन था। तो टीम का एक ये फैसला हुआ कि हम एक मेमोरियल लेक्चर करें और एक ट्रिब्यूट दें कि जिनकी वजह से ये इंस्टीट्यूशन है और बड़ा अच्छे तरीके से थ्राइव किया है। मैं आप सबको एक बात बताना चाहता हूँ, सर के जर्नलिस्टिक करियर के टाइम की एक बात शेयर कर रहा हूँ कि सर was the editor of Indian Express between 84 and 87 in चंडीगढ़। तो उस टाइम एक वुमेन जर्नलिस्ट और रिपोर्टर भी थी एंड सर वाज द एडिटर। तो उन्होंने उस चीज पे ऑब्जेक्शन किया और कहा कि सर हम आपको एक कॉरिजेंडम देना चाहते हैं कि इंस्टीट्यूशन को खड़ा करने में जो सर की कंट्रीब्यूशन या इस तरह के जो एडिटर्स और जर्नलिस्ट की कंट्रीब्यूशन रही है वो अनपैरेलल है। उसको आज के समय में तो खैर इमेजिन नहीं किया जा सकता। और इनफैक्ट जो आज का हमारा टॉपिक भी है कि इज द मीडिया प्लेइंग इट्स रोल एज द वॉचडॉग ऑफ द नेशन, क्योंकि हम सबको पता है कि किस तरह किन परिस्थितियों से मीडिया गुजर रहा है, कैसे उसको कैप्चर करने की कोशिश की जा रही है। और प्रेस क्लब अपने आप में भी एक जो है प्रेशर ग्रुप की तरह कंट्रीब्यूट कर रहा है। कई बार कुछ गलतियां होती हैं लेकिन फिर भी लार्जली कोशिश करते हैं ठीक रहे। सर की ब्रीफ इंट्रोडक्शन, क्योंकि जो सीनियर जर्नलिस्ट है वो लोगों ने सर के साथ काम किया है, वो सर को बेखूबी जानते हैं और जो यंगस्टर्स हैं वो भी सर के बारे में पढ़ते रहे हैं। और जिस तरह से खुशवंत सिंह जो लेजेंडरी एक राइटर जर्नलिस्ट रहे, उनकी लेगेसी को आगे बढ़ा रहे हैं विद लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल। और सर वाज द यंगेस्ट असिस्टेंट एडिटर with the Times of India based in Bombay. After that, he was the resident editor with Indian Express based in Bombay and in Chandigarh. और जब इंसर्जेंसी का समय था उस समय भी 84 से 87 के बीच में चंडीगढ़ पोस्टेड रहे, रीडर डाइजेस्ट के बहुत लंबे समय तक एडिटर रहे, खलिज टाइम के भी एडिटर रहे। और एक जो है कि लोग इस वजह से भी मेंशन होता है कि खुशवंत सिंह सर के बेटे हैं, लेकिन सर की अपनी भी बड़ी एक स्ट्रॉन्ग पर्सनालिटी और आइडेंटिटी है। और अब मैं अपनी गवर्निंग काउंसिल से रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा कि वो आए और जो प्रेस क्लब का मोमेंटो है वो सर को प्रेजेंट करें।
I would like to thank the President of the Press Club and the Governing Council for inviting me here. This is the inaugural memorial lecture, the first of a series, I'm told, dedicated to earlier presidents of the club. I think I was one of its earliest presidents in 1985-86. When I was resident editor of the Indian Express. This press club brings back many fond and nostalgic memories of Chandigarh. Then and even now, apart from being a union territory, Chandigarh occupied the unique position of being the capital of two states, Haryana and Punjab. And of course, it's also a union territory. And this enabled to construct this, and I was able to raise funds. And of course, it's grown after that. And it's, I think, probably one of the best press clubs in the country. The president says it is the best press club in the country. But it's certainly better than the ones in Bombay and in Delhi that I've been associated with. So because of this unique position it is held, this probably has Chandigarh probably has the largest proportion of civil servants to the rest of the population. But more about my years in Chandigarh later in my talk. I will structure this talk around my career as a journalist while interjecting it with anecdotes and comments relevant to the main theme, which is the Indian media and the role it is playing as the watchdog of the nation. After graduating from Cambridge University in History Honours, I began applying for a job to the main Indian newspapers as my heart was bent on making a career in journalism. As there was little electronic media, this meant print journalism. I had already written several articles for university magazines. The best offer came from the Times of India after I was interviewed by Shyam Lal, the resident editor of the Times of India in Delhi, and N.J. Nanpuria, the editor-in-chief in Bombay. At that time, the Times of India was headquartered in Bombay, and I was offered the position of assistant editor and became, I believe, the youngest assistant editor in the history of the Times of India at the age of 23. But I had to sign a bond declaring that I would stay with the paper for 5 years. The Times was then a true powerhouse of writers and commentators, read by the high and the mighty. As future editor Dilip Padgaonkar, about being appointed as editor, rather bombastically said that he was occupying the second most important position in the country, of course after the Prime Minister. So that was said by Dilip Padgaonkar, and it was true to some extent. It had a hint of truth in it. I mentioned Shyam Lal, who would succeed Nanpuria. Nanpuria was half Japanese and half Parsi. And he had worked with the intelligence wing of the British government during the Second World War, translating Japanese documents and broadcasts into English before becoming a journalist. And I think he became editor of the Times of India at the very young age of 35 or 36. Before he became a journalist, he was with the intelligence wing. He made a reputation for himself in brilliantly analyzing the 1962 war with China and China's intentions in his editorial columns. Then there was B.G. Verghese, in my view, the most outstanding journalist of that era. He went on to become the editor-in-chief of the Hindustan Times and the Indian Express. In fact, I was appointed as resident editor in Chandigarh by him. There was also Girilal Jain, Inder Malhotra, and later Daniel De Monte, Prem Shankar Jha, Dilip Padgaonkar, and even Arun Shourie for a short time. All outstanding editors. In those 5 years that I was with the Times of India, 1963 to 68, the Indian press was as free as any other press in the world. Journalists and editors were respected and trusted. There was no question of government pressure, and the media played its rightful role as the fourth estate. The managements of the papers also respected the independence of the editorial department and did not interfere. Just when my 5-year contract with the Times of India was ending, I learned that the Reader's Digest was looking for an editor for its Indian edition. I applied and was selected. This meant a year's training in London with the British Reader's Digest. My main role as the Indian editor was to Indianize the Indian edition, just like the British edition was made more British, though most of the articles were used from the mother American edition. At that time, 21 million copies of the Reader's Digest were sold every month in 15 languages worldwide, making it easily the largest selling magazine in the world. I don't think that record will ever be broken again. It carried articles of all kinds, self-help, medical, true life adventures, laced with jokes and humor, and written in simple but elegant language. There was something in the magazine for everybody. But let me highlight in the digest what I feel is relevant to the subject of this talk, namely editorial freedom and the supremacy of the editor. I was answerable only to the editor-in-chief of the parent US edition. He too did not report to the management. He was supreme. I also had full control of all that appeared in the magazine, including the advertisements. If there was an ad that made claims that had not been scientifically established or were questionable, I could, as editor, refuse to publish them. Hence, for instance, we did not carry any ads on how women could enlarge their breasts without surgery, or how you could get taller. There is another essential quality of the digest that I want to emphasize, and that is factual accuracy of everything we published. If you were to ask me what is the single most crucial ingredient that a publication should have flowing through all its contents, I would say that it is the credibility of that publication. People should believe in what the publication publishes and trust it, otherwise it will fail. The Reader's Digest went to great length and at considerable expense to fact check all that appeared in the magazine. Even the jokes it carried, which were mostly said by readers, were checked for their originality. For this, there was a huge research department. I read it in the Reader's Digest, often used to be the clinching end of an argument. In other words, whatever had appeared in the Reader's Digest must be true. That is the best tribute you can pay to any publication.